All right, yo, yo, yo. What's going on, everyone? Oh, where'd my webcam go? Oh my gosh. Let me see. My webcam disappeared and I don't know why. How's everyone doing? Welcome to the stream. Just get this up here now. Hope everyone's doing well. Webcam. Gosh, I don't know. I might actually almost be done with Streamlabs at this point because every time I open it up, there's something different. It just deleted my webcam. Ah, there we are. All right. How's everyone doing? All right. Let's get into this. Yeah, so for today, I want to get into actual guitar sounds. Like, how do you make guitar melodies that actually sound real and not sort of like faux guitar? And I actually got this idea last night, right before I fell asleep. I saw something in my shorts feed where someone was kind of giving advice about guitar voicings, and it wasn't actually not gonna mention any names, not to throw shade at anyone, but they're like, this is how you make a guitar sound, make a melody that sounds like a guitar. And they basically put up a voicing that was something that you wouldn't really play on the guitar. So, and I'm a guitar player. So a lot of times what people do is, like I had one stream where I showed playing in tenths, and I've been playing guitar for 21 years. So part of my career has been just being a guitar teacher. And so people give this advice and they go, oh, well, you should put it in tenths, like split your triad. We don't actually really play guitar where we pluck all three strings at the same time. And, we don't really play like that. It's not really what you would do on the guitar, because in order to do that, I'd have to either strum through with the pick and strike the strings and do like a weird left hand muting technique, or I'd have to pluck using like thumb, index, and ring, or thumb, index, and middle, skipping the D string. It's not even real. So, long story short, people give you this advice, and they're not actual guitar voicings. So if you're trying to make your guitar sound like a guitar, first of all, we just have to be honest about what we're trying to do. So the voicings that you're going to use are probably voicings that, if you're writing, whether you're writing in melodies by hand with the mouse or playing them on the keyboard, they're not really intuitive to that way of making music, right? Because the guitar has its own idiosyncrasies. It has 6 strings, E, A, D, G, B, E. Those strings are tuned fourths from each other until you get from G to B, which is a major third. So it's a structure that's vertical and horizontal because of the strings, right? So there's redundancy, there's tone, and there's idiosyncrasy to the way we play the guitar. So if you're trying to make actual cool sounding guitar melodies, you have to understand that that's something you want to start to learn, and we're going to get into that. And also the stuff that you're using to make the actual sounds. So today we're going to keep it kind of fun and simple. We're just going to get into some of the voicings that you want to try, the styles that they can create, and if you're doing it with a synthesizer that's giving you a faux guitar patch, right? And it might be actually based off a sample. So we have Omnisphere here, we have Anna here, we could pull up Serum even if we have time. But basically, the first thing you understand is that most people are trying to do this with a synth. And if we go into Omnisphere, a lot of people, if you use Omnisphere, they go into the presets looking for a guitar preset. And that's probably, there's nothing wrong with that way if you're just going for a faux guitar sound. Something that sounds kind of like guitar, but not really. But if you're trying to get closer to the real thing, you want to go into the sound source browser. So here I'm in the the sound menu here. And these are essentially these are sound sources, right? So these are actual, samples that people are going to use. If I go into here and you click sample, you can see I've got baritone guitar DI. So baritone guitar DI is one of the samples that comes with Omnisphere. And so you can even say, like, you can go and load up, actually, let's just reload this. You could load up a patch of Omnisphere. And I've covered this in a short a little while ago. But a lot of people don't learn this about Omnisphere. They sort of only check out the presets. The presets are amazing. I love the presets. But if you go to layers or just click the A tab here, you see it's on default, it's on synth. So I'm going to go sample, and I'm going to go in, and now I'm in the sound source browser. And so this is where you could just type in guitar. You can learn a lot about, like, kind of going through these different menus and stuff, but basically you could go in and you'll see a bunch of guitar-esque stuff. The baritone guitar DI is the one that's meant to sound. I'm just playing the sample here. Make sure that's coming through too on our stream here. So right there, it's a short sample, by the way, but it is a guitar DI sound. So you can start with something really dry like that. That's a great place to actually start. But again, this is a short sample. And it's actually particularly kind of bright sounding. So if I took an actual DI guitar, which is up here, and this is why some people do prefer audio one-shots, which we'll get into. Notice the difference in the darkness between the two things. So this one is... Or I got to solo it. There we go. So there's that one. And here's this one. And that's me actually playing a C note. I think it's C2 instead of C3 on Omnisphere. But C2 with my thumb, not using the fingernail or a pick, on the 3rd fret of the A string on an actual guitar, DI, right? So there's a huge difference in the sound. So when you start, even with something that's supposed to kind of be the real McCoy, it's going to sound brighter and more kind of digital. And for lo-fi music, we do a lot of lo-fi on this channel, but also trap and R&B and stuff. You probably actually want to still process this even when you're there, right? So, but we're just going to start there. Let's fix our tempo. We'll turn these off and we'll start making actual melodies. So I'm actually in the process too of making a guitar one-shot pack, which is basically going to have full DI of C notes based off of the different areas of the string. So 3rd fret A string, 8th fret E string, 5th fret G string, 13th fret and 1st fret B string. So all the spots on the guitar. So you actually have the string tone. And then I actually do one shots for like all the open strings, and then 3rd fret, 5th fret, 9th fret, and 12th fret. So that way you also have the vertical position based on what guitar players are actually doing. So it's kind of a pack that I'm working on right now. And I'm kind of planning on making these streams about guitar melodies a more regular thing, maybe like once a week, so that we can share just royalty-free MIDI clips with the community and share ideas and advice about how to make real sounding guitar stuff if you're not a guitar player, right? So, because it's a really fun thing to do. So, okay, we got our guitar DI. And the thing that I was referencing before about like how people kind of give advice that's sort of faux advice for faux guitar sounds. So this is one of them, right? So what they're going to do, and it's, it's not, there's nothing wrong with it. If people tell you on YouTube, they're like, just take a triad. And you can see I'm writing out a C major triad here. And so what they're going to do is you have this triad, and they're going to say, well, move this up an octave. And that's more sort of real sounding for a guitar player, and you can see the distance where I took the third and I actually made it a tenth by bringing it up an octave. Now that's not bad advice, but we just wouldn't play that really like that. It just wouldn't make a lot of sense. So you'd be more likely to see someone kind of strum out that thing. And then that's going to sound more realistic. But even right off the bat, you can tell I'm using a guitar DI sound. I'm just kind of writing it in on the piano roll, and it doesn't really sound real. It's not quite there. So I'm going to bring the sample down closer to where the guitar kind of lives when I play that, which could be C2 or even C1. Of course, C1 is a bit low because in reality, most of our guitars only really go down to, well, what you would list as E2, but sonically, in this case, it's E1. So this would be closer to having your guitar playing this with your lowest possible E string. Right, so we can take this idea and run with it, but right off the bat, a lot of times they're going to give you something that a guitar player is not going to necessarily play that way, and they're also using a pitch that's incorrect just because they're using a synth patch basically to do it, which is okay. Like, this is an interesting topic for me to talk about, and I love to share this advice with the community because I'm a guitar player. But like, if people give you advice that kind of sounds like a guitar and not really, well, that's part of the aesthetic too, right? Like, I don't judge it. If you're trying to just make something that kind of sounds like a guitar, but it's also kind of weird sounding, that's cool too, But sometimes I just feel the need to point out that the advice is probably given by people that don't really play guitar themselves. So you get some of these ideas that are like, this is how you do it, and it's maybe not totally correct. Or totally real sounding. Maybe we'll just put it that way, right? So let's say we're in the key of E major. We'll do an F sharp minor triad. So if you have F sharp, we're going to have C sharp right here. And I call them faux guitar sounds because it's like, it sounds kind of like a guitar, but it's more weird because it's coming from a synth patch, right? I think that's actually kind of cool. Like, I prefer that for a lot of different sounds because I think it gives you more flexibility. When I play my guitar DI in and I process it to make it a cool lo-fi guitar sound, it's going to be a different process. And that's okay. Sometimes I prefer one over the other. And neither way is wrong, right? So I just feel the need to point that out. But yeah, I definitely think sometimes the advice that's given is not necessarily by people that actually play guitar, which is okay, I have nothing against that either. So let's see here. Then we want to have a B natural on top. And so now we're just building out that sort of typical tip people give about making a split triad, but we're strumming it out and we're using the correct pitch. So we have G sharp and we have D sharp here. And maybe we'll go up to the 4 chords, so we'll have an A major at the end. And this will be sort of a more kind of gentle sounding, a little more emo maybe, dare I say, sounding melody. By the way, hope everyone's doing well, is healthy and happy today. Finally getting into spring here on the East Coast, which is nice, All right, so here we go. So, a little more realistic, right? It's not the worst patch in the world. I mean, it is Omnisphere, which is great quality stuff. And now I can experiment and try some other things. Like, this is a cool harmonic sound. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's funny because when you go into the guitar patches, like the different pitches totally change the picture. And I'm purely using my ear. Like I've been teaching guitar for 10 years. I've been playing guitar for 21 years. So I can, and it's not a flex. I'm just saying like I can pick up the guitar and I can strum the open strings. It's like an E6 add 4 chord. And I can just tell if a guitar is in tune just from strumming the strings because I've tuned a guitar in my life, 10,000 times, right? So when I hear a synth patch, usually they're too high. So they're not even really sort of analog to what the actual pitch on the guitar string is. So I bring stuff down. I mess around with stuff. I've nothing against people that want to make a faux guitar sound. I like those sounds. Like this doesn't sound really real to me, but it's still cool. Yeah, correct voicings. And this is the advice people are giving. I just see this on Instagram and YouTube Shorts where they're just telling people to do this, where they're just parallel. And that's not really what would happen on a guitar. Not really. You'd have to left hand mute the thing, and you'd also be playing in the minor. If you're playing the minor voicing, you'd have to bar down with your index finger. It's just not, we wouldn't do it that way. So it's like, but that's the thing. It's sort of guitar voicing, but it's pitched to people as like, this is the way a guitar is played. It's not. So you'd probably want to arpeggiate things out. By the same token, people will basically just take a chord, they'll go into strum mode or something, and they'll be like, this is how you make it sound like a guitar. And they're just doing a blanket arpeggiation, which is really still just a piano or a keyboard sound. Because when you arpeggiate something on the guitar, you have to take in sustain and staccato, right? Because you only have 6 strings. You don't have 10 fingers. So that's the reality, right? So we're trying to be a little more realistic. These are things we have to think about. So here we have one patch. This is pretty cool. Now, I would still process this a little bit more because it's so clean sounding, and I want to make it sound like it's, inside of an actual guitar rig, so we got to get an amp here. Let's see. And, we'll be full digital. We could always reamp it through a guitar amp, which is pretty cool, but, just for today, let's do something else. So I'm going to grab Helix Starter, and this is my Helix Native patch, which is just a convolution setup using some amp emulation. This tends to brighten things. We'll see where it places it. Yeah, so adding in the cab, it's going to take away that bright, present, forward, high fidelity sound that's inherent to these patches, and it's going to put some convolution into it and essentially darken it to the ear. This is a little more realistic. Now I'm going to run parallel with a more ambient sounding reverb. So essentially creating a room sensation around that sound. And this should take us a little further too. And I love Verb Suite Classics. It's really well designed for indie rock stuff. We can mess around. I'm pushing this way back. So there's a little bit of a reflection, and it kind of sounds like we recorded it in like a basketball hall or something. Of course, you can spend as much time on this step as you want, No, I haven't tried NAMM yet. I haven't heard of it. I don't know what that is. Yeah, so we're trying to make this sound less dry. And now we can get a little creative with it. So maybe I'll take a long tail reverb and just mess around. Just find some stuff. These are a little more specific. Oh, here we go. Huge guitar space. Perfect. This kind of has a lot of diffusion on it, sounds like. Yeah, a lot of late diffusion. It's alright. It's just kind of a little too much diffusion for my taste. Let's try. Where's Bright Hall? There it is. So that's pretty cool. And then if we want to make it a little more lo-fi, take the whole signal. And we'll just give it a little bit, some heat. So you've got something that kind of sounds like a guitar. It's playing harmonics, so I don't know how realistic that is. That's probably really hard to do. But there you go, right? And you could, of course, go back in your chain and switch stuff out again. Let's go back to DI. But the main takeaway besides the plugins is the actual execution. This would be more realistic. You could also add in the groove stuff. I don't have it on my... There it is. So you could actually add in groove because we have... This is an Ableton situation, but if you're an FL, you can just wiggle stuff around, mess with your velocities. But you could also grab this thing and just experiment. You know, this is going to add feel. Open source amp modeling, yeah. We could probably do a whole stream about IRs, to be honest. Impulse responses. All the spots on the internet to get free impulse responses. Or even how to make them yourself, too. So there we go. We've got a excuse me. We've got a sound. Excuse me. Let's just freeze and flatten this in. We'll try another one. So that's like one voicing, kind of playing more intervals style. But then when you get into actual chord voicings, we have a bunch of them. Like a lot of people love to get into. Let's see. What could we do? The Steve Lacy sound. So trying to get something that works well in that sort of indie pop, indie R&B type beat sound, right? But maybe you're not a guitar player, or maybe you just want to do it on your keyboard. So you can learn these voicings on the keyboard that relate to the guitar. So I'll play you an example right now while this is rendering. So Steve Lacy uses a lot of chord progressions that use dominant chords, half diminished chords, but also very typical. They're also very typical to jazz. So you'll see a lot of this stuff about like 2-5-1 kind of thing. So that would be an example of 2-5-1. And you might be able to see, I don't know if you can see on my cam, but I'm playing very typical jazz voicings that are very traditional that we teach guitar students how to play. All these things that we use. So you can hear me playing these voicings a little bit. You probably can't see it though. So you want to learn, if you're not a guitar player, you don't want to practice all that stuff, you could put that into your keyboard voicings. So actual voicings related to this style, right? So let's just flatten this real quick. And the traditional jazz voicings where the root notes on the E or the A string of the guitar are going to, let's use an Anna patch for this one. Why not? So traditionally, we have something like this. Where you're starting with the 5th fret on the E string, you're skipping the A string, and then you have these 3 strings, the D, G, and B, really expressing the core parts of that chord voicing. And that would be an actual A major 7th chord, right? So what we want to do is we want to emulate that with one of these faux guitar patches. So we go in here. This is kind of a cool one, A Million Good Times. This is in the stock menu for Anna. So we're looking for A. We're going to look for a pitch like this. Just write that out real quick. And so we've got this here. And you can see when I play it, it's jumping up to a G sharp that's going to be up an octave there. So we're going to go up here and do this. So, and I don't want to be negative. I'm not trying to point out other people's advice because I like their advice, but they're going to tell you to build, like, if you want to make it sound like a guitar, you got to build a 7th chord. And they actually kind of start with the major 3rd, which in this case would be a C sharp. They kind of start there and they start building the chord how you would, normally build a chord as a piano player. And that's just not what's happening on the guitar. So, it's not bad advice. It's just not really actually relevant to getting a real guitar sound, right? So we're going to have the G sharp up there. In that chord voicing, traditionally, you're going to have the C sharp comes next. So that's up a perfect 4th from that spot. So we go up here and we add our C sharp 4. And then we have E, which is up from there. Put in our E. So this, the way this looks, and if anyone wants me to build this in FL, just let me know. We could do a stream on this just in FL for my FL people out there. So you see that great distance between the root note on the bottom and the G sharp. Now, it's all hitting at the same time, which kind of sounds like I'm slamming my hand down on the strings. That might not necessarily be what we're going for, but you can see how that matters so much when it comes to velocity. So in that case, I might be putting the lower note up higher, because you imagine when you're coming down with your right hand, you have typically more bias towards the low E string. So the lower note goes up a little higher in velocity to get a little more volume, dominance over these other things. And I keep these guys because they're on the D, G, and B string. I keep them in similar velocities because they're so close together. They wouldn't have vastly different velocities, which you'll see people do. Now, if it just sounds cool and you like the way that sounds, go for it. Doesn't matter. There's no rules here, but just so that you kind of know. So there we go. And then maybe let's build something related to what a Steve Lacy track might do. So maybe we'll try a 1, 2, 4, which is a nice kind of gentle chord progression. So we'll go in and we'll build the same exact thing now with a minor 7th chord. So in that case, it's going to be a B minor 7, which actually follows the same exact setup in the voicing, right? So let's just go in here and make this a little bigger. We should probably just make this full screen. Yeah, I'm doing, that's a great question. I see your comment about guitar voicings pack. In my current lo-fi packs that I have on my website, by the way, check the link in the description, everyone, if you want free stuff. There's tons of free stuff in there, and there's tons of guitar loops. It's all royalty free too. There's no There's no catch. I know a lot of people put out packs and it's like up to 1 million streams, and then no, they're all 100% royalty free. You can get that stuff. But yeah, that's a great question or a great suggestion, because I do record a ton of guitar. I've just never done a pack where I just do one shots and like you said, voicings. So that's coming up too. Like I want to make a pack for my people on YouTube that's just literally it's just voicings. So if you want to do one shot with one note, you'll get like a cool guitar note that's from a real recording, not a synth. And then you can get if you want to put it on your drum pads, you can have actual chords diatonic to one key. So maybe we'll make it C minor, A minor, or C major, whatever. So you get nice 7th, 9th, and 11th chords set up in there on your drum pad. So you can hit that with your beat, right? So it's just something I haven't had time to do, but you know, that's definitely an idea I'd love to do as we get into these streams. And just make it for people to get inspired with. It's a great idea. Let's see here. But yeah, anyone new to the channel or new to the stream and you haven't checked out the link below, definitely check it out. I'm also going to be adding in some new stuff I'm working on right now, new free downloads, which are coming up probably in May. So look out for that. So here I got my B minor 7. Same idea. So we got to have the A on top. That's the minor 7th. Okay. And then comes the C, D natural, which is the minor 3rd. And then we have the F sharp, which is the perfect 5th. But notice how when I'm writing it in by hand, most DAWs are going to give you this sort of makeup. And, you know, that's probably not realistic. Remember the bias towards having a strong E note if you were playing that way. Could be the opposite for a lot of guitar players. You're playing lightly on the bottom strings or the higher pitch strings. So there we have B minor. So nothing changed about it. If you're used to writing in stuff by hand, this should make pretty good sense to you. Higher velocity on the bass string, the E string, our faux E string, and then these guys up here. But now I'm going to take it one step further towards what the guitar might be doing. So I might go like this, but then I might go to this voicing, which is going to have a slightly different tone because the root note is on the A string. So that voicing, when it's on the A string, is going to have a different makeup of intervals. It's a different voicing on the piano roll when we try to express it, right? So we're going to go up to a D here. So that's not changing, but make the velocity a little bit lower, and then we're going to have a perfect 5th because the way that chord is built in the hand, it's like a power chord, and then it has the 7th and then the 3rd. So it's 1, 5, 7, 3 in terms of the intervals that make that chord, right? So you would keep the A right there. That'll bring you a little bit closer where you want to be, and maybe we'll have a similar velocity to D because maybe a little bit lower, but it's a lower string or a lower pitch string, so it's going to be a little more weighted on the hand. And then we go over here and we're going to need, what do we need next? The 7th, right? So we need the C sharp, which is right there. And then you need the major 3rd. In this case, that would be the F sharp, which is right there. So notice how if you were just kind of playing, if you're a keyboard player, or if you're writing stuff in by hand, which a lot of people like to do, maybe you wouldn't necessarily think of this kind of, you know, idea. So it's just based on what the hand is going to naturally do. All right, so now you got something like that. And yeah, that's fine. Whatever. So we'll make it a 3-chord progression. Does this make sense, you guys? Hopefully this makes sense to you guys. We're literally following what the guitar does. That's kind of the idea. Ripcord. I haven't heard of it. No, that's cool though. Um, yeah. So here we've got here we've got everything we need for that progression, and then we can just start to build from it. So this is the one idea that you're looking at is 7th chords on the guitar. If you're building them off of the E string, just for people that want to get a breakdown of this so far, the 7th chords off the E string have this makeup. So you can actually write this down if you want. You have root or the 1, then you have the 7th, and then you have above that, you have the 3rd and then the 5th. So 1, 7, 3, 5. If you're trying to build something that actually sounds like someone playing 7th chords on the guitar, you use that interval stack. Even when you go to a minor 7th or a minor 7 flat 5 or a dominant 7 chord, that interval stack of 1, 7, 3, 5 applies there. When you go to the voicings based around the root note off the A string, which is another traditional set of shapes on the guitar, then you have 1, 5, 7, 3. 1, 5, 7, 3 in terms of the intervals of that chord, right? So these are the secrets. These are the secrets. If you don't want to bother playing guitar, you don't own a guitar, you can't afford a guitar, you can get great guitar sounds. It's just the actual voicings, the interval stacks that you want to learn. So there we go. And yeah, we can start to build maybe a track from this. I have to do kind of a short stream today because I got to run. But yeah, let's just start building something from this. So I'll do a little more sound design on this, I guess. This is a little thin sounding, so maybe I'll go in and try to embellish that a little bit more. Yeah, there's just not much activity around there. See, I wonder if we actually combine this with another guitar sound. That could be cool, right? We'll go back to the Omnisphere patch. We'll grab that baritone DI and just combine them, see what happens. Sample, go to the sound source menu, baritone guitar. There's other guitar one-shots in Omnisphere, but I just think the baritone is like less tinny sounding. So this is just higher pitched up, so we have to take all this, bring it down. That gives it a little more bottom end, right? Maybe we'll turn the velocities down on the baritone guitar as well, because it's just a little bit too much attack. And then we did use grooves there, which might add something. If we add a little shuffle, maybe that'll make things sound a little more interesting. Yeah, it doesn't do much because there's not a whole lot of syncopation in there anyway, but or none basically. That's pretty cool. So whatever, let's just freeze it. Buy another guitar today, yeah. I've been using the this Stratocaster Jimi Hendrix Stratocaster. I bought this when I was like, or my parents bought this when I was like 13. So I've been using this guitar for a long time. Yeah. The pickups are also very noisy. So when you hear me turn the volume up, I don't know if you can hear that on the mic, but it's definitely noisy. But I can't replace the pickups on it because I don't know. It has a cool sound to it. It's very retro sounding, which comes in handy for like getting that kind of retro sound. Like a lot of modern guitars with the noiseless pickups, even the single coil noiseless, they do sound very, I wouldn't say modern, but it's just their response is very clean and perfect. Whereas like this guitar, they wanted to make pickups that sounded like that era, so they are just pretty noisy. And in particular, the bridge pickup is just very, very thin sounding, which is, you can get some really interesting sounds from it. Okay, so now we have some cool audio, and we're going to take it one last step today. So this is going to be about the melodies over the chords, right? So if you wanted to add a counter melody or like a melody on top of the chords, and how guitar players actually approach this stuff. Like what are we actually going to do? Now we can go for a patch that is still just like a DI pluck, but there's a couple options. I'm just using Omnisphere, by the way. Any synth that you have at all, feel free to explore the either patches that they give you or the sample menu that they give you for this stuff, because everything's different, you know. But I'm gonna go in and we'll grab baritone guitar. Let's see how it works with baritone guitar. Keep it simple today. So we got the DI, and now what would I do over these chords, right? So I might play something like kind of cool in F sharp minor pentatonic. So the key is A major, but on the guitar, a lot of times we use the pentatonic scale to create cool bluesy riffs, right? So you're hearing this. I don't know if you can hear this. So I'm just playing something that a guitar player, like a session guitar player, might do when they hear that sound. Or maybe A major pentatonic, which would sound like this. So you can hear me riffing, hopefully, on the guitar, and it's like, okay, well, maybe you don't play guitar. How do you get to there with the piano roll? The basic idea is just learn the pentatonic scales, which sometimes do get ignored because people ignore the pentatonic scales in their scale highlight feature in Ableton or their scale stamp feature in FL when they're trying to learn the scales on the piano roll, right, in their DAW, because the pentatonic scales don't really help you find the chord triads visually, right? So people tend to stay away from them, and they're even treated maybe sometimes like an oddity because it's 5 notes. They lack those other 2 notes. They lack those half steps. They lack the diatonic, all 7 notes shows you where the triads are kind of thing. So they end up getting ignored. But when you're doing guitar emulation, the pentatonic scale gives you a lot of the characteristics of what I just did there, right? So that's what you're going for. So let's start with the A major pentatonic scale. I'm going to go over here. Again, in FL, you can do this. I'm just using Ableton today, but you can go in, use a scale stamp on a blank sampler track, and then use that in your piano roll as a background for what you're picking your notes out from, right? But in this case, I'm going to use scale stamp. So we go over here and click scale, and I'm going to click A. I'm going to look for major pentatonic. So immediately you see when you go from major, you're losing 2 out of the 7 notes. Hence 5-note scale or penta, right? So now we go into like, what did I actually play over that spot? So you can see here I'm starting with an E, F sharp, A, or the 5th, 6th, skip the 7th to the octave, right? And then 2nd to the 3rd to the 5th, and the 6th on top there. So that's a spot right there where a lot of great riffs happen, particularly from the 5th, which is an E, the 6th, the major 6, which is F sharp, and back up to the octave. Just 3 notes. Start off that playing position that the guitar players are going to use when they're giving you that great funky Mark Ronson, Steve Lacy kind of sound. The major pentatonic funky guitar thing, right? This is how you do it if you're not a guitar player or you don't want to go on Fiverr. So we'll go over here and we have to go down to probably E2 or E1. So let's go there now. There we are. And we'll make it staccato, a little more shorter of a note, in other words. Go up to F sharp, we jump up to A. You'll notice it's following the scale highlight feature. So we're skipping that G sharp, that major 7th. And you get something like that. Let's make the notes a little shorter because I played them a little faster. Now that sounds less human, but we can start with something like that. Turn these down so we can hear the lead better. And then my move that I like to do is something like that. So there I'm starting with the B. It's going to slide up to a C sharp. And then I'm going to sustain over it at higher E. Right there. So let's let these sustain together. And then we will take these and we'll make them even more staccato. Too short might sound like a clavinet. Not bad. And then, of course, we can't let these sustain into the next measure because that wouldn't be what my hands would do. So now we have a decent little pattern. So something to go with. It's a little repetitive, but you get the drift. Now let's do a little bit of sound design to make it a little more real. So again, I like to use line 6 Helix. You can use the Drive and Color folder in Ableton. You can use Destructor if you want. You can use a free impulse response kind of thing that people have out there. Let's see here. Let's just grab a random patch in Helix. Why not? That sounds pretty good. Now let's just mess around a little bit with the timings. Push them back a little bit. That's pretty good. And we'll, just because we're lazy, Do the same thing there. So that's a little bit. Another cool trick I like to use is actually just using a parallel delay to create kind of a slapback delay sound, which works really well as well, because a lot of times on our guitars we like to plug in pedals, and a slapback delay is really good at giving sort of more syncopation to what you're actually playing. And there's a couple of other things we could talk about, like in that space, like making those kind of pedal setups with just your plugins, even your stock plugins, right? So I'll go in here and let's see, looking for, we could use a vocal slapback even. So maybe we'll go to something like Dark Analog Box. And I've already got some reverb just in that Helix patch, which is kind of cool. So just adding a little more dimension to this thing. But even before the Helix native, what I might also do is simulate using a compressor guitar pedal. A lot of times you have a compressor guitar pedal to get this specific kind of sound. And there's a lot of plugins out there that are meant to emulate that. Even famous pedals like the JHS, I think it's called the Orange Peel. They're all based off very famous kind of sounds. And you can use something like the API 2500, which is really cool to get into that kind of world. I'm actually getting really into the 124, the Abbey Road 124, because it's really snappy sounding. So it might actually sound cool. We'll turn off the other effects and just run this in. Let's just match the level. It's cool. It just adds something kind of interesting. That might be cool if we just sort of keep it like that. But we can also let that cool ending just ring out, sustain, like we're holding it. Here with the rest of the chords. And bring these chords back in. So it's pretty fun. You know, you can kind of get pretty into it, you know. Yeah, pentatonic. I mean, you'll hear a lot of keyboard players when they're playing as a keyboard player, right? They'll whip out the pentatonic scale, they'll whip out the blues scale. um, as a keyboard player, but for producers, it's very much ignored, um, because if people are writing in stuff by hand, I've just noticed that the pentatonic scale is kind of irrelevant to them, just because they can't find the triads in there, right? It's kind of a abbreviated scale, having only 5 notes. So people getting into music theory are really getting used to the major and the minor scale, building their triads from it, understanding chord progressions and melodies from it, which is great. But when they're trying to create like a Polo G style song, or something that they want to get tracked, and they don't want to bother with learning the guitar, they have to kind of start to check out the pentatonic scale, because those melodies will sound a little more realistic. I wouldn't say this is my best one, doing the faux guitar thing, but it gives you an idea. So basically, we built jazz voicings, we did some sound design, we built a pentatonic, an A major pentatonic style riff that you would actually play on the guitar. And add some drums to this. I'm just going to use the master set pack, which has been a lot of fun to use recently. There's a bunch of good stuff on here. Could also try slow this down a little bit too. Now I'll do some bus processing on this. Then maybe we'll also do some sidechain compression. Going a little more lo-fi in this kind of sound, just for fun. Too, and now you have a lot of freedom with it. Like I might even take an LFO. You can get weird with it, or just use it as sort of a real slight kind of depressor. I I gotta run, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Yeah, I know. Keyboard producers, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a thing for sure. Hope you guys found this interesting. I definitely want to just straight up cover a bunch of different voicings based on guitar. So if you're not a guitar player, you can actually access that kind of sound design. Or you just hire a session guitar player. You can also do that as well. But hope you found this interesting. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. It goes a huge way to supporting the channel and just getting the algorithm even aware of the channel, to be honest. So that does a lot to support me, way more than you can imagine. The link in the description below is to a bunch of free stuff you can check out, a bunch of great packs that have amazing value as well, tons of sounds to use, some of which you're hearing right now. And yeah, I gotta run, but thanks for coming to the stream, man. Appreciate it. And yeah, appreciate all you guys coming to the stream, saying hello in the comments section. And yeah, have a great Wednesday, everyone. I'll catch y'all later. Take care.